Welcome to Viewpoint. We are pleased this morning to introduce you to Dr. Robert Derlet. That's D-E-R-L-E-T. Dr. Robert Derlet is a Sonoran, a local resident, and he's running for he's a candidate, I should say, for the office of Representative for the 4th Congressional District. We welcome you, Doctor.
Thank you.
First of all, perhaps you might explain to our viewers about what the 4th District is. Some of us are not that politically apt, so to speak.
So there are 435 members of Congress, and the United States is divided up into congressional districts. Each district has about 700,000 people. This is a very large district compared to many in California, and the district starts at Highway 80 and runs south through Yosemite along the spine of the Sierra, as well as the Sierra foothills, all the way to and including Kings Canyon National Park. The size of this district is greater than any single one of half of the original 13 states of the United States. Bigger than Maryland, bigger than Massachusetts, bigger than Rhode Island. So it's a huge area. It's over 200 miles long, a lot to cover. I think the people who live here should be very proud because it's the heart of the Sierra Nevada with the best hiking trails, the best fishing, the best lakes, incredible recreation. In fact, 2/3 of this district is federal land, which includes Kings Canyon National Park, Yosemite, as well as Lake Tahoe, and 15 wilderness areas. There's numerous opportunities for downhill skiing. There's over 15 downhill ski areas.
15?
15. And I fell in love with this district when I started doing research on high elevation watersheds almost 20 years ago. And it just absolutely beautiful high country, and I sampled water at over 200 lakes and streams within the High Sierra, including the national parks. And the good news is most all the water is clean and clear. And yes, there are a few pockets where you'd have to be careful in drinking the water, where you might find Giardia or Salmonella or E. coli. And as I was doing research in this area, I says, wouldn't it be wonderful if this were a single congressional district? And we had a guardian to really preserve the natural beauty and the watershed for generations to come. In fact, almost half the surface water, drinking water in California, comes from this part of the Sierra Nevada.
Amazing. I wonder how many of our viewers actually realize that. But you do, as you have hiked this area, viewed it firsthand, as well as testing the water.
Yes, in fact, I covered thousands of miles of trail, mostly as backpacking, and up and down the Pacific Crest Trail. There was a time limit because we would collect the water samples and I'd have to race back to the trailhead and then race back to the lab at the UC Davis campus to analyze the samples.
How fun.
Yes.
How interesting that you're able to do something you love as well as something that helps all the citizens. We all use the water. I was wondering if this is the impetus for your running, but I think we'll hold that off for a few moments, that question, and get into your personal background. So can you tell us a little bit about where you've come from and where you're going, hopefully?
Yes, I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, and except for a short period of time, 4 years that my family spent in Hawaii, I graduated from high school in Los Angeles and then went to college at UC Santa Cruz. From there, I went to medical school at UC San Francisco and then moved on to UC Davis for a residency program. When I finished my residency program, I was asked to stay on at UC Davis and to work in the emergency department and eventually I was appointed chief of emergency medicine. At that time, at UC Davis Medical Center, the ER was very small, primarily consisting of one room with 3 beds.
Really?
Over the course of 18 years when I was chief, we expanded the emergency department to 42 beds. And
oh my goodness.
during that time, I actually presided over 1 million visits to that emergency room. Now, I didn't see everyone, but
Of course not.
I had to supervise the physicians as well as indirectly the nursing staff to provide good quality of care, and I'm very proud of it.
It's a wonderful, wonderful institution.
Yes. So at a point in time several years ago, my wife and I said, we love this and we actually like living in Davis, but we want to see what else is out there. And we moved to Tuolumne, in part because I love the hiking and fishing opportunities in this area, and settled here. And I thought I might retire, but medicine called again. So I went back and worked for 3 years at the Tuolumne Miwok Indian Health Center in Tuolumne. And that's actually what motivated me in part to run, because I talked to so many families who lived paycheck to paycheck and were having difficulty making ends meet. And then
There's a great deal of that here.
And then add to that medical costs, which are skyrocketing, and difficulties with some of the insurance plans. And I says, somebody really needs to stand up for these people.
Ah, sounds like you have a big heart, as well as being a dedicated physician. You are not a specialist, right?
Well, I'm a specialist in emergency medicine. I'm board certified in emergency medicine. I'm also board certified in internal medicine. And when I was at UC Davis, I practiced emergency medicine. When I came to the Miwok Indian Health Center, I practiced internal medicine.
I see. Well, thank you for giving us that background. I'd like to get on now to some points that you would like perhaps our viewers to know that you feel strongly about regarding your candidacy. What are some of the things that you believe in?
Well, I'd like to start with healthcare, since I've been in that field all my life. And let me start by saying that the Affordable Care Act, which some people refer to as Obamacare, passed in 2010, so 2010, is really an important step forward in reforming our healthcare system. Without the Affordable Care Act, you could be refused insurance even if you're in the middle of, say, treatment for something as severe as cancer.
People forget that, I think sometimes.
You could be refused healthcare insurance by a company for some minor medical ailment that you'd had 20 years in the past. For example, if you got poison oak, that could be a grounds for saying, you had a pre-existing condition and we have the right to refuse you. Well, it's important that the Affordable Care Act prohibits that. The Affordable Health Care Act also provided health care insurance to those people who could not afford it, and through healthcare exchanges. So we have almost 20 million Americans now who otherwise would not be able to have health care. But there's still a ways to go, and some people have been left behind. As an example, some of the plans have a deductible as high as $6,000 per person, or $12,000 for a family. By deductible, I mean you pay out of pocket for almost all of your medical costs until you've reached that point. And I've talked to people who said, well, what kind of insurance is this? For me to come up with $6,000 to pay for lab, x-rays, medication is very difficult. Mm-hmm. And even though I, quote, have insurance, it's almost as though it's just catastrophic. But for the day-to-day necessities of healthcare, I don't have insurance. Congress needs to plug that hole. We should not have deductibles that high. In fact, as an example, I think Medicare has a deductible somewhere about $150 a year, which is much more reasonable than $6,000. We have people who are paying very high healthcare premiums, which are still too high. My understanding is that the healthcare insurance industry, just that segment alone, retains 20 to 25% of the healthcare dollar. Now contrast that to some other industrialized nations, Switzerland, Germany, where the insurance companies retain 3 to 5%.
And I think Medicare is 2 to 3%.
Precisely, right on. We actually have the biggest single payer system in the world. It's called Medicare, and seniors love it. Medicare is administered with 2 to 3% administrative cost, and that includes policing and chasing down fraud. So to actually back up what we're talking about, in this country we pay twice as much for health care per capita as other advanced countries. $8,500 per person per year, compared to about $4,000 in many European countries.
Do you think that the Affordable Care Act has helped to lower costs? I've wondered about that. I've read pro and con.
There has been some discussion about that pro and con, and it's 1,800 pages long, and there are some requirements in there to help lower costs, but they're almost so complex it's hard to understand. And I think we need to streamline the Affordable Care Act and amend it to make it simpler, to get rid of these very high deductibles and high insurance costs for some people.
So you see it as a first step.
I see this as an important first step.
And then going into something that's more like other industrialized nations have, which
right,
is...
and an important notion to understand, which is not in the headlines of the paper, is let's go to Medicare. Medicare has set prices based on the region of the United States that you're in. Medicare goes out and audits the actual labor cost and delivery cost, say like to have a chest x-ray. And from what I understand, in the Central Valley, the Medicare reimbursement for a simple chest x-ray is $35. We have hospitals in the Central Valley in California who charge as much as $600
Yes.
for a chest x-ray. Now, what's so important with Medicare is you cannot be balance billed. So if Medicare says, okay, hospital, you're getting $35 for this x-ray, that's what we think is fair, and you still make a profit, you can't go after the person for the additional money, the other $565. Now, that's true if you're on Medicare, but if you have some insurances and the insurance does not have a contract with that hospital, you can be balance billed. And this balance billing, as I say, it's not in the headlines of the newspaper, but that can throw you into bankruptcy.
Right, and it has for many people.
Let me give you an example on that. There was a case in Arizona of someone who was bit by a rattlesnake, and the cost of hospitalization was $80,000. They happened to be in a hospital that was not contracted with their health insurance company. The healthcare insurance company says, we think this is worth $30,000, and paid the hospital $30,000. That person was left with a balance bill of $50,000. Now, they were going to have to pay for it themselves, but in this instance, they got the news media onto this, that the hospital was going after a person with very little money for a balance bill of $50,000 that they would have to make payments on the rest of their life.
And probably lose a home or other assets along the way.
Right. So, a few solutions in amending the Affordable Care Act would be to prohibit balance billing. So you're not stuck with what your insurance company doesn't pay. And there's a precedent for that with Medicare, and it's successful.
It is. It is. And speak to us of, I have a list here of some of the points. I believe they're here. what about wages and cost of living? That affects so many people here in the 4th District.
For this, I'd like to actually go back over 50 years to 1960 and look at the productivity and ingenuity of this country. And for years and years, actually beginning after World War II, as productivity rose in this country, going up, wages rose parallel, so that the wealth was shared among everyone, among the workers, among the managers, and among the owners of corporations.
True.
About 1980, there's a break. So productivity and what this country could build and the wealth continued to rise, but wages started to become flat. Now, there was some increase in family income between 1980 and 1990 because 2 people in a family would go to work.
That's right.
But essentially, the median household income has been flat since 1990. But so much has gone up. In addition to healthcare, which we've just talked about, cost of owning a car,
Every time I go to the grocery store, things have gone up.
the cost of everything at the grocery store, housing costs have gone up enormously.
Especially in California.
The cost of tuition for kids going to school.
Yeah.
So we have this gap here. And then ask yourself, well, if wages are flat, yet the wealth is continuing, where is that wealth going?
Exactly.
It's going to Wall Street. And this is where you hear about the wealth gap and inequality, that there's too much concentrated wealth going to too few people. Do you know that the most wealthy 400 people in this country have as much wealth as the bottom 150 million? Think about that ratio, 150 million to just 400 people. And
Something's wrong.
not only is it harder to live and you live paycheck to paycheck, you struggle to make ends meet. By concentrating wealth in a few people, it undermines democracy.
Yes, it does.
It undermines democracy because the wealthy have the political power through their money, not only to lobby Congress, but to pay for candidates, to write the agenda, and to write the laws that would benefit them.
I was just
for
going
lower
to say, I
taxes.
have read that some of the richest corporations send lobbyists to help write laws, actual word for word.
I have heard the same thing, yes.
There must be something behind it. Well, it looks like another huge problem in our country that we need to address.
The issue of lobbyists in Washington, although they have to register, I think lobbyists have too much control over Congress, which really translates to too much control over laws and what benefits you versus what benefits a large corporation or
Exactly.
those who are super wealthy.
What do you mean here on your list from your website, which by the way, we will give to the viewers later so that they can look this up themselves, by consumer rights?
So what happens if a company makes an error on your credit card bill or on your mortgage or on your car payment? What can you do to appeal? And who's on your side? Because in many cases, the financial institutions are going to want to extract money from you. And until the Consumer Finance Protection Bill, which is championed by Elizabeth Warren and enacted in 2010, you didn't have a lot of people on your side to help you out. This bill in Congress is known as Dodd-Frank and actually puts some limitations on what large banks and financial companies can do. And basically, it's after the Great Recession in 2008, people said, what were some of the issues it causes? Well, one is we had the Depression back in the early 1930s, and there was a law called Glass-Steagall that said, okay, here are regulations the bank must abide by to prevent another.
Wasn't that during the Clinton administration? No.
It was repealed.
It was repealed then, that's right.
This law to say, here are the rules Wall Street must follow. And following those rules, this country had some of the most successful growth and became the greatest nation on earth. And then it was undone in the late 1990s, which led banks and financial institutes to speculate, to go into predatory lending with very few restraints.
Know what happened
and we know what happened. And then Congress in 2010 passed the Dodd-Frank, which said, hey, Wall Street, you have to follow some rules. And it's not as stringent as what was passed in the 1930s. But along with this new set of rules were the formation of protections for people. And one of this was the Consumer Protection Agency.
Which was a fight to get through, I heard.
Very much. And I might add that Wall Street spent almost $500 million, $500 billion.
$500 billion.
$500 billion to try to
stop
this. Yes.
Well, that figures. They're benefiting. There are two more things I want to touch on before our time runs out. One of them is education, since that's close to my heart. How do you feel about our present setup with education? Particularly, I know there are some inequities insofar as elementary school, high school, so on. But what's happening with our youngsters who are trying to get a college education and can't?
Okay.
Or if they do, they're left with such terrible costs to repay.
Let me first correct my answer on Wall Street lobbying for Dodd-Frank. Against it, it actually was $500 million. So $500 million. That's the correct answer. So to education. When we look at education, I think we need to look from the very beginning, and that's preschool. Many of the industrialized countries have free preschool, which I think we need to have in this country, and we have the money to do that. We have public school and education through high school, and in the past we had free tuition at many of our public institutions.
Yes.
States decreased funding to public institutions, and as a result, tuition has increased. It's increased at the University of California from several $100s a year 30, 40 years ago to now $15,000 a year is the tuition. And then you add on another $15,000 for room and board and books and other incidentals, and you're coming up to $30,000 a year for 1 year of college education at a state institution. $120,000.
I went to Fresno State for $450 a semester. $450.
Good for you.
A long time ago, but
so this is limiting opportunity for many of our people.
Oh, yes.
And many of the students who are very promising. Sure, you know, there's scholarships and there's aid programs, but this is not all encompassing of everyone.
Social Security and Medicare, can you touch on that?
Sure.
We're going to run out of time here. You have so much to
are members of
tell us.
Congress who want to hand over Social Security to Wall Street. I'm against that. It just means Wall Street takes their 2% cut, and if there's a rise in the stock market, could take something similar to hedge fund managers, as much as 20% of your rise. We don't want that. Keep Social Security as it is.
People love their Social Security.
And they love it.
And they've actually paid for it.
And the same with Medicare. Medicare should be kept out of Wall Street, should not be a voucher system. Now, what is a voucher system? Many people say, well, what is it? It means you are given a voucher worth so much money and you shop around to different HMOs
Right.
to select the HMOs.
There's not an
pay.
HMO even offered in Tuolumne County.
That's correct. In rural areas, it's difficult. Well, there's two issues there. One, remember we're going from a 2% administrative cost with Medicare
Yes.
to 20. Mm-hmm. You're
Big
losing
difference.
money on that.
There's 18% right there.
And then translate that to you in a smaller community. You may have 30 primary care doctors, nurse practitioners, PAs that you can go to now in your community who accept Medicare. If you're in a Medicare HMO, that HMO, and we'll call it Green Cross, the Green Cross may only contract with 3 of those 30 physicians.
Exactly.
So all of a sudden, you're limited, even though you have Medicare, to only 3 doctors who may not have room to take you. Your choice, your freedom would be more limited by
Right.
having a voucher system.
Right, and I hope it doesn't come to that, since I have Medicare.
We already have something similar to that in larger cities. It's called Medicare Part C, which you can assign all your benefits to an HMO. And I can tell you from experience of my dad in Los Angeles, who thought he had a large panel of physicians to choose from. He only has a few now within his neighborhood.
It's been fascinating, and we could speak on and on and on. There are so many other things here. In particular, I want to get to women's rights, reproductive rights, which I know that you feel women should retain. We've spoken before of their own decision-making process as far as their reproductive rights with their doctors. But we're running out of time here, so I want to be sure that you folks who are out there watching today and listening and considering the primary season that's coming up, I want you to be sure that you consider all of the candidates who are interested enough to come and speak with you. And Dr. Derlet I've been speaking very little because he has a great deal of interest to tell us and to say, and on other subjects than we touched on today. Maybe we'll do this again. In the meantime, he would like to give you his phone number, which will also be shown at the end of the video, and his website. So could you tell us your website?
Yes, the website is www.derletforcongress.com. I'm also on Facebook as Derlet for Congress, and we are in the process of setting up a campaign headquarters with a campaign telephone number. You can donate if you're interested to my campaign by going to the website and clicking on the links to Act Blue. I would really appreciate anything that you could help me with.
It's been our pleasure to interview Dr. Bob Derlet today, Robert Derlet, who is running for Congressional seat District 4. Thank you and goodbye.